Let's bring in the senior counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you right away about these allegations from Omarosa. You've heard them, obviously. She says that she felt a growing realization that Donald Trump was indeed a racist, a bigot, and a misogynist. You seem to be quite close to Omarosa when she was at the White House, and when she left, you called her a very valued member of our team for a very long time. So what do you make of what she's saying now?
The first time I ever heard Omarosa suggest those awful things about this president are in this book. And I think that Omarosa, unfortunately, has undercut her own credibility, whether it's in the NPR interview, confusing a very central fact in the book, that she has never heard those alleged tapes, and then she said the tapes really changed it for me. And this is somebody who gave a glowing appraisal of Donald Trump, the businessman, the star of The Apprentice, the candidate, and indeed the President of the United States. She told your own network, John, ABC News, the day after she was fired from the White House, that she had resigned. Now she's saying she was fired, that Donald Trump is not a racist. She said she had never heard him use the N-word. Let me tell you something. 2 years ago today, Donald Trump asked me to be his campaign manager. I have worked alongside that man for over 2 straight years now without interruption. I have never a single time heard him use a racial slur about anyone. And I also never heard Omarosa complain that he had done that. And so the only thing that's changed is that she's now selling books. And look, I think Omarosa is a tremendous disappointment here, because she should be taking credit for all the great gains that this president has made with respect to that low unemployment number among African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and others. She should take credit for the fact that in his first month in office, he took decisive executive action on behalf of HBCUs, workforce development, prison reform now, the drug crisis, which I've tried to work on with Mr. Cummings and others on his side of the aisle. This president is saying with prison reform that if you've paid your debt to society, that you should be given a second chance. And there are over 6.6 million available jobs now in the Trump economy, and we want everybody of every background to have the skills, the training, the education, the opportunity, and the dignity of work if they so desire. So I feel like Omarosa could have taken some credit for that, said, look, I worked in the White House for a full year, and I got the ball rolling with the president, but that doesn't sell books, and that doesn't settle scores. So I understand whether it's 30 pieces of silver or a 7-figure book advance, people do change their loyalties and change their mind. But I would refer you to Omarosa's own comments, very glowing appraisal of this president's work and this president's work with respect to the African American community. Omarosa also criticized the Congressional Black Caucus while she was in the White House for refusing to meet with the president.
So just to be clear, she says that she heard the president use racially charged language even in the White House, including...
She never said that to us in the White House, and I certainly have never heard it. But why didn't she tell us at the time? Why not tell ABC News the day after she was fired that that is, in fact, what she witnessed? She was asked explicitly the important question by your colleague at ABC News, John, and she said, no, he's not a racist. She said, I would not be there, and I wouldn't be there. None of us would be there if that were true. You've got to... I totally agree with Congressman Cummings that you should look at what people do. And this president has made tremendous gains on behalf of the African American community and continues to. And I do have to correct the record. You said that the president has never denounced a white supremacist. I want to read you his quote from August 14th of last year, because it's missing from the conversation. And I quote, "Racism is evil. All those who cause violence in its names are criminals and thugs," quote, "including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans."
Kellyanne, as you know, the president also said there were very fine people on both sides in that rally. That was a rally led by neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
And he denounced them, but you're not covering that.
No, but he said there were very fine people on both sides.
Why does that matter? Why does it matter that you're not taking the totality of his comments over the stretch of days, John?
Well, because I think it's still a question. Who were the very fine people on the side of the neo-Nazis?
Well, he's telling you who's not. He's saying he denounces, quote, the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and all those who cause violence in the name. And yesterday, in a very, very strong statement, he said that last year there was senseless death and division. He's calling for unity among all Americans, and he denounced all forms of bigotry and acts of violence and racism.
Still not specifically calling out the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists who are...
You just don't cover it. Do you even have, excuse me, does ABC even have the quote in your file that you're able to put it up right now for all your viewers? Probably not. But I just read it.
I mean, I think the fact that he said very fine people on both sides, and one of the sides was led by neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
Whom he denounced.
I still don't understand.
He said they're criminals and thugs.
So who were the very fine people marching with the neo-Nazis?
White supremacists. He denounced all of them. You're just not covering it. But look,
okay,
I agree with Congressman Cummings. You should go. I answered the question, but you've got to show all the quotes to be fair. And John, I totally agree with Congressman Cummings. We should see what people's records are. So why don't you go send a reporter to Chicago, to Baltimore, to Philadelphia, where the mayor of Philadelphia said, we're no longer going to give information to ICE, and a child was sexually abused by an illegal alien who should not have been there. Why don't you go cover the violence? And we've got an increase in homelessness, in crime, in violence in these major inner cities that are governed by Democratic mayors who have not lifted folks out of poverty, have not created the jobs my boss has created for them.
Kellyanne, the Omarosa was the most prominent high-level African-American serving in the West Wing on President Trump's staff. Who now is that person? Who is the most prominent high-level advisor to the president on the West Wing staff right now?
African-American?
Yes.
I would say that, well, first of all, you're totally not covering the fact that our Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and world-renowned
I'm asking you about the White House staff. I'm asking you about the people the president is with every day.
Well, the president works with Secretary Carson every day. He's trying to break the back of the scourge
who
of
there is on the White House
addiction.
staff right now?
And we have Jerron, who's done a fabulous job and he's been very involved with Jared Kushner and President Trump on prison reform from the beginning. He's been there from the beginning. He worked with Omarosa and others of us.
Does he have an office in the West Wing, Kellyanne?
He has an office in the EOP, absolutely. The Executive Office of the President, yes.
But not in the West Wing. What does that say to have not a single senior advisor in the West Wing who's African American?
I didn't say that there wasn't, but hold on.
Who is?
Me. There are plenty of people. If you're going by that and not by the actions of the president, which you probably should, then you should look at the fact that we have a number of different minorities. And the fact is that this president is doing well for all Americans. He promised on November 9th, on his election night, he wrote it into the speech. I was there when he changed the speech and wrote it in. He said, I will be the president for all Americans, even those who didn't support me. He said, and there were more than a few. He said in the wee hours of November 9th. And he's made good on that promise. Jonathan, look, you may not want to cover it as much as it should be covered, but the lowest, historically low unemployment rate.
I've said that already twice so far on the show.
I'm sorry.
So don't say we're not covering it.
Because it's a fact. It doesn't get covered enough, just like you gave 24 seconds of coverage to the vice president receiving the remains of American soldiers who fell decades ago in Korea. These things just don't seem as important as Russia.
One other question, and I haven't asked you anything about Russia, is Omarosa said that she was offered $15,000 a month to work for the Trump campaign if she signed a document saying that she would not speak about her time in the White House. We've also heard the same number, $15,000, offered to two other staffers leaving the White House. Is the president in the habit of offering hush money to people leaving the White House?
That's an insult, and that is not what was offered. If she had worked on the campaign and she left the White House, according to her interview with ABC News, John, on great terms, that the president is, quote, not a racist, and that she's very proud of the work she did with him, and that she knows, and all the glowing appraisal she's had of Donald Trump's work over the years, most specifically in the White House and on the campaign, why not ask her to go back to the campaign? It is typical, and you know it, to sign an NDA, and excuse me, to sign an NDA in any place of work. I'd be shocked if you didn't have one at ABC. I'm told she signed them when she was on The Apprentice, certainly at the campaign. We've all signed them in the West Wing, and why not have somebody who had
signed them in the West Wing
there again?
You've signed a non-disclosure?
We have confidentiality agreements in the West Wing. Absolutely, we do. And why wouldn't we? And by the way, the fact
you're a public employee.
Well, hold on. But the confidentiality is implied. John, hold on. Thanks for bringing that up, because I would have been remiss in not mentioning something you didn't ask me, which is these reports that Omarosa surreptitiously taped conversations in the West Wing, indeed maybe even the Oval Office, For what purpose? You have a reasonable expectation of confidentiality and privacy in your conversations at your place of work. Why shouldn't we in the West Wing? Why shouldn't the President of the United States in the Oval Office, indeed, the few times that she was in there with him? I mean, this is, but look, many people who have left, I can name them, you know them, who have left the White House have been offered positions on the campaign, I believe at the Super PAC, because they've demonstrated their talent, and they've demonstrated that they get the president, they continue to support him. That's something Omarosa told your colleagues at ABC News the very day after she was fired. She said she resigned. She changed that now in the book.
Kellyanne,
but why not offer? That's not hush money. Everybody sends an NDA. It sounds like she didn't want to sign it and didn't want to go back to the campaign because she had a book on her mind.
Kellyanne, I know you have to go. Before you do, I want to ask you about the midterm elections. The president tweeted, quote, "As long as I campaign and/or support Senate and House candidates within reason, they will win." He is predicting a giant red wave. Now, you are a pollster. You've been involved in campaigns for a long time. You don't think the Republicans are actually going to see a red wave, that they're actually going to pick up seats in the House, do you?
They certainly can, and here's why. First of all, this man makes, this man makes history. He doesn't repeat history. He makes his own trend. He doesn't follow them. I would think that the media got all the polling wrong. I know you guys were doing national polling, which was irrelevant and inaccurate, but got all the polling wrong, didn't think he could win, probably didn't want him to win. This is somebody who's going to go out there and put up his own political currency. And we won 8 out of 9 special elections so far, John. That's a great track record. Here's the problem I see for the Democrats. Is who's in charge of their party? Is it Tom Perez, who they don't respect? Is it the 28-year-old socialist? Is it the 70-something-year-old socialist? She gets her facts wrong routinely about basic policy issues. Is it Elizabeth Warren, who says that all law enforcement is racist from front to back and forward and backward? Is it Hillary Clinton, who still can't get over her loss in 2016? Who is the leader of the party? And what is their message exactly? They shut down the government at the beginning of this year. All of them voted against the historic tax cuts, which have led to 6 million Americans getting bonuses or raises or both, where our corporate tax rate has decreased so that these folks are hiring more people, lowest unemployment rate, GDP at 4%, energy development, renegotiating imbalance, non-reciprocal, unfair trade deals for this country. Hey, what is the message? That 400,000 manufacturing jobs are a bad idea? They have no message. And I went back and read speeches by President Obama at this point in 2010, his first midterm election. It was all gloom and doom. And for this president, it's all economic boom. It's a fundamentally different message. We understand there are 42 House retirements. That's tough. And we see that the party in power usually suffers grievous losses. But can you tell me it's going to be the 63 House seat losses that Obama suffered or the 54 Clinton suffered? Nobody's predicting that right now.
So Kellyanne, can you clarify something before you go? The president was again tweeting about Attorney General Sessions yesterday, saying our AG is scared, stiff, and missing in action. This comes after the chairman of his campaign manager, Brad Parscale, is saying it is time to fire Sessions. Are Sessions' days numbered as Attorney General?
The president is frustrated that the Attorney General recused himself in early March of 2017 from anything having to do with the campaign. Right. And what the president really wants, if you look at all of his tweets and don't just cherry pick them, the gravamen of his tweets, John, are that he wants to make sure we're investigating all sides of the quote, so-called Russian collusion. I've noticed that the media is almost silent about these new revelations that Christopher Steele and the number 4 at the FBI, Peter Orr, and his wife Nellie working for Fusion GPS. I don't want Americans to get so confused with this convoluted mess to miss the essential point here, was that the pro-Hillary people were so afraid that they needed to prop her up, that she was such a non-compelling, non-persuasive, pathetic candidate, that they had to dig up dirt on Donald Trump early on.
But to my questions, will Jeff Sessions be the Attorney General by the end of the year?
Well, how in the world will I know the answer to that?
Well, what do you think? Ridiculous. We have the campaign manager saying he should be fired. We have the president saying he's missing in action. I mean,
excuse me, I'm not answering questions as to who will be in the White House at the end of the year. Okay. That's a crazy question. You just want to roll the tape sometime. I think the fundamental point here is that the Attorney General is doing great work on law enforcement. on pushing back on MS-13 gangs, on his SOS, which is the Synthetic Opioid Surge Task Force, working with the new DA acting director. But he has recused himself from this, and the president rightfully wants America to see that this Mueller investigation comes to a conclusion in a timely fashion. So far, no Russia collusion proven, and you know it. You know I was the campaign manager for the winning part of the campaign. I never talked to anybody in Russia. I talked to people in Macomb County, Michigan, and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, not Moscow. You know
Kellyanne,
it. There's no collusion. Paul Manafort's on trial, has nothing to do with the campaign, Russia collusion. The judge warned everybody not even to say those words.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.